Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
Happy Leap Day, Mike.
Happy Leap Day. It is exciting for Leap Day, isn't it? Because it only happens once every 4 years.
Right? It's a limited experience. We only get to have so many times in our lifespan. So.
Yes, my father-in-law's birthday is Leap Day.
Oh, that's cool.
So in traditional old man humor fashion,
right,
it'll be like, well, he's like, technically, I've had 16 birthdays. You ask him how old he is or whatever. He's
right.
like, well, which birthday is this? And he's like, it's my 16th birthday or something. No, he's
pretty cool.
He's not that old, so maybe he'll say his 12th birthday or something.
Yeah.
And it's just funny the way you're like, okay, I get it.
No, that's awesome though, because you can have an extra big party,
right,
when it actually is a leap year and it's your actual birth date.
Right. It's just so ridiculous. But my favorite Leap Day memory though is when we had the Scott Bakula party.
Oh yeah, that was really fun. The Quantum Leap Day.
For Quantum Leap Day in 2008. We premiered our video for Scott Bakula that day, actually.
Which is one of our songs from our third album.
Yeah, Cynical is the name of the album, and I'll put a link to it because it is Leap Day. I'll put a link to this Happy Leap Day Quantum Leap video.
In the show notes.
In the show notes at othersidepodcast.com/81.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's hard to believe we already have 81 episodes.
Yeah.
Like, we've been doing this for well over a year now.
That's crazy. But the Quantum Leap Day party was a blast. We premiered the video, and it's just easy to remember that party because it was on Leap Day.
And I owned a rental property at the time, and the pipes broke that day.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was a day it was negative
That's
temperatures in Wisconsin. So considering it's 50 degrees, or it hit 57 degrees yesterday in Wisconsin.
Yes.
Considering it's so warm, I mean, I was hanging out, I was picking up my guitar and amp somewhere, and there was somebody was in shorts and not even wearing shoes, like just walking down the street. I'm like, you're insane.
Yes. No, I went running yesterday, and this is a little bit of a promo for Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
But I went on the Ice Age Trail and the Badger State Trail.
Oh yeah,
two of the big trails near Madison here, and it was just gorgeous. And man, the bikers were out in force.
Sure.
Bikers, runners, walkers, dogs. It was great. It was beautiful. Everybody's like, hey, we can leave our houses.
Right. It's exciting. It's
There's a world out here.
It's like being freed after being in the bunker or whatever forever.
Yes.
Like you finally get to leave the bunker.
But I did have that spring-like appreciation for Wisconsin. It was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah,
so.
It is. It is beautiful. And and good news is that it's planning on snowing on Tuesday. So it's going to.
All right.
This week.
Tease.
You ever see that weatherman that like he's like from Nova Scotia and he's like screaming? He's like,
yeah,
get your iPods charged. Get your, it's like, there's going to be a major snowstorm. Get frozen pizzas. Like he just screams it out. He predicted the snowstorm for Tuesday.
Oh yeah.
So
perfect.
Keep your iPads, iPods, your tablets charged, your laptops charged.
Yep. Well, we don't have to worry about spring too much longer, Mike, because we're going to be heading in the southern direction soon.
We certainly are. I
Tour.
was just in the South this week.
Oh, that's right.
I was just in Atlanta this week, and it was fun, but it was still like 43 degrees. So it was still cold. So we're looking forward to even to go souther
right.
than Hotlanta. And
yes.
And so we are going to be going to Austin, Texas. For several days in March, and we might be coming through your city, listeners.
That's right. We're going to be hitting up several cities on the way down. So if you are in any of these cities or near them, we'd love for you to come out and check out our performance and say hello.
And show us your ghost story.
That's right. Show us your ghost story. Maybe have a coffee or a beer with us.
We'll be, Wendy and I will be playing songs that we have premiered here on the podcast. So it's a paranormal themed show, and we'll be playing our band songs that are all, it's a special acoustic performance. We'll be doing music that we debuted and sing on the podcast here. So that's it's kind of mixture of the stuff we do here and the music that you guys so lovingly download and tell us that you enjoy every week. Thank you.
And I cannot wait.
Yeah, we're doing that. So if you are in Cincinnati, Ohio, Nashville, Tennessee, New Orleans, Louisiana, a place that I know has got more ghost stories and vampires and stuff like that than any other place.
That's right.
Houston, Texas, or Austin, Texas. Please check our website, sunspotmusic.com. And at sunspotmusic.com, you can see the tour dates of where we're going to be appearing and the places we're going to be going when we take See You on the Other Side and Sunspot Music on the road.
Yeah, and who knows, Mike? Maybe we'll stop at some weird places along the way. Hopefully, we can check out some sites.
We will definitely be stopping at weird places along the way. I'm pretty.
I mean, I don't just mean the clubs we're playing at. I mean,
right, right. That'll happen too.
Those are always weird.
So,
in the best way possible.
Yeah, and if you guys have any suggestions for places that you think might be fun for us to visit, or great haunted stories, or urban legends and stuff, please send us an email at show@othersidepodcast.com, or you can tweet us Otherside Talk, and then we'll see that. And then so at Otherside Talk is our Twitter, and that's usually where we do the most action. Is usually we'll do some tweets, and
and I've met a lot of really cool people on Twitter. It's pretty awesome.
Yes,
there's tons of people that are interested in this type of stuff, and they all have a lot of cool stories and things to share. So
they certainly do.
Hello to all my new Twitter friends.
Yeah, and happy Leap Day, everybody. Enjoy it every 4 years. If it's your birthday today, too, enjoy your 12th birthday.
Enjoy your youth.
Right, enjoy your youth while you have it. So today, we thought it'd be fun to talk about Egypt. Now, we've been talking about Orientalism for a long time, and the Oriental fad that overtook the United States and a lot of Western civilization in the early part of the 20th century. And so, because there was brand new news about King Tut's tomb this week, and also the movie Gods of Egypt opened up on Friday, we thought it'd be a good time to talk about it.
Perfect timing. Definitely.
Yeah. So anyway, probably should talk about this right away because I know some people on Facebook and Twitter were talking about the Gods of Egypt did not hire real Egyptian actors. It stars Scottish actor Gerard Butler, and who was from 300. He's not Greek either, but he was pretty good in 300. And it also has Nicolaj Coster-Waldau. Not Waldo. I make him sound like he wears a striped shirt.
Where is he?
Yeah, he's one of the main characters too. So it's pretty European for the Gods of Egypt. And the director of the film, Alex Proyas, who also did The Crow, which is such an incredible movie, and Dark City, which is another incredible movie. So I'm an Alex Proyas fan. I think he's awesome. He said, we could have been more diversified in the casting, but it is a fantasy film. And so he apologized, said, next time we do something like this, maybe we'll look around there and try to get some Egyptian guys or
make it a little bit more representative of the way things might have actually been.
Yeah, I mean, you'll know Nicolaj Coster-Waldau because he's the guy that plays Jaime Lannister on Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah.
So, right. And he, he's got a great English accent in Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't know that he's Dutch.
No, not at all.
Or is he Danish? Oh my God, is he Danish or is he Dutch?
I don't know.
Hold on, I got to look at that right now.
Oh boy.
Otherwise, I'm going to be embarrassed if I'm like, oh, he's Dutch. I know he's definitely not English. So the English accent he puts on his Game of Thrones, he's Danish. So excuse me, he's Danish. Wow. And just a stunningly good-looking man.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Definitely. He's a handsome one.
Yeah. There's a movie you can watch on Netflix with him where he plays a bad guy. And it is just a tremendous film. I recommend it to everybody that it's really a fun. It's all in Danish, though.
Okay.
So you got to, if you're okay with subtitles, and I am certainly okay with subtitles. Headhunters. Headhunters is the name of the movie. It's a Norwegian film. But he's speaking the language, and he.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, so all those European guys are always good at speaking languages.
Pretty impressive.
Everybody's can speak multiple languages over in Europe.
Yeah.
We're over here. We're struggling with English as it is.
Right.
Anyway, Headhunters. I think they're going to remake it for the U.S., but they haven't done it yet. But it's free and it's on Netflix, and he is awesome in it. So I'm a big fan of that guy. I don't know if he's going to be a great Egyptian god. I was busy this weekend, so I didn't have a chance to see the movie yet. So I have no idea if he plays a good Egyptian god, but I do know that he's a pretty good actor.
Yeah, and if anybody sees it, feel free to let us know.
Mm-hmm. And
opinion of the
and it's getting it's getting some super low like Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh,
But I'm still gonna see it because it looks cool to me. I'm a big fan of Alex Proyas, the director, and I love the fantasy stuff. Orientalism. There is a thing. I mean, we still treat Egypt as this other, as this mysterious place, like it's, and there is something not necessarily dehumanizing about it, but when you treat an entire other culture like it's not like yourself, it's mysterious, it's strange, it's unusual. I mean, I think a lot of people have a problem with that because that's what leads to prejudice of a culture.
sure.
When you say something is too mysterious, too crazy.
Or they're so different we could never possibly understand them.
Right. And, I mean, Egypt is like the big daddy of ancient civilizations. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's probably fascinated people for so long for a couple of reasons. Like nobody talks about Assyria very much anymore.
Mhm.
Nobody talks about, I mean, everybody talks about Greek and Rome, but they're right in Europe. With Greece and Rome, you see their descendants all the time. Like it's
Right. It's not mysterious. It
No.
doesn't have that same kind of
aura that, Egypt does. And
right.
and it's probably because number one, the pyramids are still standing.
Right.
And they're huge.
And they're awesome.
Right. I haven't been to Egypt. I'd love to go
I
sometime.
haven't either. Yeah, it's definitely on the list.
But the thing is, I mean, they're the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world that are still standing.
Yeah, that's incredible.
The Great Pyramid. And I mean, just the whole thing. And they butt right up against the, encroaching metropolis in Egypt. So if you look at a picture, and I'll try to grab a picture for the show notes here. If you look at a picture from the pyramids, like a satellite picture, whenever we see pictures of the pyramids, it's always like from the perspective of the sand.
Yeah.
So it gives you that air of, that this place of ancient mystery still exists.
Right.
That there's a place you can go. But the thing is, when you see actually how close it is to the city, it's like right outside the city.
Oh, wow.
So when you look at the satellite picture, it's like, wow, like there's a big city right next to the.
Oh, so you could just walk right over to the pyramids.
I don't know if it's walking distance. It does look like it's just a couple miles, though. I mean,
Okay.
it's not like 50 miles.
From the satellite.
From the satellite, right. So I would say, I mean, I would at least take a bus. I probably wouldn't just walk there if you're in Cairo or whatever, but I would
Okay.
go. Okay. So, number one, so the pyramids are still standing. And Egypt as a civilization is, mixed right into the mythology of Christianity. So the Old Testament, the first 5 books that they say were written by Moses, the Pentateuch. I mean, Moses was, in the story, he was a prince of Egypt. He had been found, and he'd been found like in a little basket on the Nile.
Okay.
And they picked him up, and there was like the queen picked him up, and they raised him as a prince of Egypt. And it was his brother that was the pharaoh. His not real brother, but his Egyptian brother was the one who was going to become the pharaoh.
Okay.
Yeah, and then he was a Hebrew, and the Egyptians had enslaved the Hebrews. The Hebrews, completely different than the Hebrews. The Hebrews, anyway. No, the Hebrews who were enslaved by the Egyptians, and he freed the Hebrew people. And that's the start of, that's the real start of Israel as a country and all this ancient stuff. So that the Egyptians are right in there. And so even if you're in the Middle Ages, if you're someone in the Middle Ages in the middle of Europe and you're uneducated about everything else, you're going to know about Egypt because you read the Old Testament.
Uh-huh.
So you know about Moses, so as long as you're religious, then you pretty much know about it. So this ancient civilization is fresh on everybody's mind because they talk about it in church.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that helps it. And the Egyptians are never known, they're not the good guys in these stories because they enslaved the Hebrews. The good guys are the Hebrews running away. And so you've seen the 10 Commandments, right? Like it's on Easter every year, Charlton Heston.
Maybe a long, long time ago.
Moses, Pharaoh, let my people go kind of thing. He's, well, speaking of whitewashing, you get Charlton Heston to play, Moses, and he's about as non-Semitic as you can get. Doesn't even look exotic, But I mean, Orson Welles also made a great movie where Charlton Heston played a Mexican, so who knows? Right. Anyway, so I mean, that's the whole story. It's ancient Egypt. We watched that from a young age, and what they're doing is like they're going after the Egyptians in that movie because they're trying to free, Moses like, let my people go, or we're going to unleash plagues.
Ah, I see.
There's going to be locusts. We're going to kill your firstborn. That's the last one.
Yikes.
Yeah, we're going to go in and kill your firstborn.
Man, that's about as brutal as it gets.
Right. So the Egyptians are considered such bad guys that it's okay if the God of the Old Testament sends the angel of death to kill their firstborn.
Wow.
Right? So talk about considering a culture the other. Just wantonly murder their firstborn.
Right. Break one of the commandments.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually, we talk about Egypt and pop culture. Metallica has a song off the Ride the Lightning album called Creeping Death.
Yes, I'm familiar with the song.
Yes. And Creeping Death is about them watching the 10 Commandments and seeing the angel of death come in and killing the firstborn.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I never thought too much about the meaning of that.
About the meaning of creeping. It's just like, that sounds like a real badass song.
Yeah, it does.
And it is a badass song. Like in the part in the middle where everybody, like live, you hear Metallica play Creeping Death, and then everybody just screams "die" over and over again. It's die, and the lyrics are "die by my hand, I creep across the land, killing firstborn man."
Didn't you say when you saw them the first time they opened up with that?
Mm-hmm.
And the crowd was all just chanting.
It was going crazy. It was the Marcus Amphitheater.
Oh, man.
1992, and it was the second half of their Enter Sandman tour. So it was a Summerfest in Milwaukee.
When you describe that to me, I'm like, can you imagine just being surrounded by a bunch of metalheads like screaming out, die!
Yeah, it was awesome.
That's about as Metallica as it gets.
Yes, that is about as Metallica as it gets. And, it's just funny. Imagine 25,000 people screaming along die to this song about, them watching the 10 Commandments. Yeah. So in the 10 Commandments movie, and this is spoilers for a 60-year-old film now. Maybe it's 50, I think 1957, 1956. And I've seen the 10 Commandments a dozen times. It's got Edward G. Robinson as, one of the Hebrews. And, where should deliver now, Moses? I've always enjoyed it. Oh, yeah. I've always enjoyed the 10 Commandments because it's a hardcore movie.
Yeah.
And, the special effects of parting the Red Sea. Like, they part the Red Sea.
Sweet.
So that the Hebrews can escape. And then when the Egyptians all get into the Red Sea and follow them, that's when Moses
close it up.
Moses brings the hammer down and, drowns the entire Egyptian army.
So how did they do that effect 60 years ago? Was it like a cartoon ocean that was gone over or something?
Right. They didn't have CGI or anything. It looks pretty good.
That's cool.
The parting of the Red Sea and the 10 Commandments still looks pretty good. It was like the biggest special effect of all time.
Yeah, they must have used some kind of trickery for that one.
No, and it's awesome. But the thing is, in the movie, when the plague's happening and the angel of death is coming to all these Egyptian houses, what happens is that you see the smoke come under the people's door. And the smoke is the creeping death. The smoke is the death that sneaks up on people and kills the firstborn inside their own homes.
Yeah, that's a good way of representing it visually.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, too, because it's also gruesome what the Jews did. They painted lamb's blood on the door.
Mm-hmm.
And so they put the lamb's blood on the door, and that was to let the angel of death know, hey, no, we're cool, we're Jews.
Yeah, I think I remember learning about that in Sunday school a long time ago.
They're like, nope, get the Egyptians, don't worry about it. I mean, the fact is, you'd think that God would know, like God's like, you know what? This is the angel of death. This is not a pizza delivery driver. And God's just like, you know what? Here's how to make it easy. If you see lamb's blood, don't go in there. And the angel of death's like, yeah, that's cool, God, no problem. Yahweh, I'm down. No, but it's just such a funny thing. It's like, yeah, lamb's blood. Like you could just some Egyptians were like, oh, put lamb's blood on my door and they won't know.
Right. Trick the pizza guy.
Right. You trick the pizza angel of death coming to get you. Man. But anyway, I mean, that's the thing. So ancient Egypt is it's cooked into the blood of our cooked into our civilization. I mean, that fact. And I always make jokes about the Old Testament God. I remember one time I was playing guitar for my family on a vacation, and I improv'd a whole song about the Old Testament vicious and angry God.
Right.
So that my sister will still, when she comes to a Sunspot show, she'll be like, hey, can you play vicious or vengeful and angry God tonight? Because the God of the Old Testament...
That one really brings the house down.
It really does. The God of the Old Testament is jealous. If you're worshiping another God, he'll kill you. If you do, it's a jealous, angry, upset God. And
vengeful.
To be fair to him, or, to be fair to God of the Old Testament, he did have Moses give the warning about the firstborn. he did say, he's like, or he, she, whoever. I'm trying not to attach any kind of gender to God.
Sure. No, I understood.
So he did say to Moses, like, you should probably tell the Pharaoh, that I'm going to kill all the kids unless he lets you go. And so he did.
Yeah.
And then Pharaoh was like, ha, ha, ha. And in the movie, it's Yul Brynner, bald, got a real deep voice, Yul Brynner. Anyway, but that's just a little bit of the, we want to talk about pop culture. We talk about why Egypt is just part of our Western civilization very closely. Not just because some of our ideas about things came from ancient Egypt. It's just because they were close enough to the cultures that we can directly derive Western civilization from. Europe and Greece and Rome and stuff. It's close enough there, but it's mysterious enough and it's different enough that studying it, that you can attribute all these things to it. You can attribute magic to it. You can attribute their gods and spirits and all the mystical kind of things because they had spells and everything like in their daily life.
Right. Yeah.
So the Egyptians it was a very magical culture. And so I think that's why Orientalism really excited people, because it was being able to study that real interest, really interested about it. And I think that's what attracted that. So Egyptology kind of first started becoming a thing after Napoleon conquered Egypt in the very beginning of the 19th century. So Napoleon conquers Egypt, comes through, and then you bring that tradition of French universities, French scholars and stuff, and they start studying it. And so they start exploring the pyramids and making it a museum thing instead of a robbery thing.
I see. Okay.
So, in the past, when you explore the pyramid, you wanted to get some treasures. And that's one of the reasons we're talking about it today. Not just a new movie coming out, but also just recently, they had radar points to a secret chamber in King Tut's tomb.
That's so cool.
So, King Tut, obviously the most famous of the pharaohs. And why do we love King Tut? Because Steve Martin.
Right.
And the Toot Uncommons.
Yeah. But don't you think it's amazing that they continue to find things after so many years of running around in those tunnels and exploring? You'd think they would have tapped them out by now, but there's still stuff in there. It's crazy.
It's been over 3 millennia. The idea that they still find stuff. So here's the quote, and this is from history.com, was where I read the original article. In an academic paper published this past July, British archaeologist Nicholas Reeves made the startling claim that King Tutankhamun may not be alone in his burial chamber. After spending months poring over ultra-high-resolution images of the Boy King's mausoleum, the University of Arizona Egyptologist spotted what he believed to be the outlines of 2 doorways that had been blocked and plastered over to hide them from view.
So you could just tell from the pictures?
Yeah.
Wow, well, I guess got good eyes.
Ultra high resolution. So they must have been 4K cameras.
Okay.
They didn't just break out the old, remember 1 megapixel cameras?
Oh man, the Sony Mavica with the little floppy disk.
Yeah.
Put in the side. Yeah.
Man, when I think about our first press photos that use digital cameras, it really just looked like
pixels.
Yeah, it looked like a computerized image when I think about these original digital cameras. And now we have a digital camera that's, I think even the new iPhones, the 6S or whatever, I think they're 4K. So
wow,
even entry-level digital camera, smartphones have amazing digital cameras on them, 4K. Yeah. So when I think about the original 1 megapixel, it just looked like crap.
I know, it's funny.
You're just
but it was so exciting to be able to take that floppy disk and just have the pictures on your computer and not have to get them developed and then scan them.
Go to Walgreens with some crap.
Right? Get a CD from Walgreens.
Yeah, it certainly is. It was something else. So anyway, he was looking over the ultra high resolution images, and he thinks that King Tut's mom, Nefertiti, might be the one who's buried next to him. So a secret burial chamber. So it's more than just treasure. That the fact that a secret burial chamber might be in there.
History.
And that's exciting, that idea. And, one of the reasons that King Tut is such a big deal, and people talk about Nefertiti and stuff like that, is that King Tut's father, Akhenaten, had a huge impact on the planet because he decided to change Egyptian mythology from many gods to one god.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Right. Monotheism. Talking about the Old Testament, and it's monotheism. That's what it's all about. And to talk about it a little bit for a second, if you talk about Egyptian myths, like the most famous Egyptian myth is about their big guy, their Zeus, their Jupiter, was named Osiris.
Mm-hmm.
And Osiris was murdered by his brother Set, who is a god associated with chaos. Osiris's sister and wife, okay, that's another thing to represent, because Egyptians were down with incest, resurrected him so that he could conceive an heir, Horus. And so Osiris then goes down to the underworld, becomes the ruler of the dead. Horus defeats Set, and then becomes like the big dog of the Egyptian mythology. And I think in the movie, Jaime Lannister, no stranger to incest himself.
Right.
Spoilers for the first episode of Game of Thrones. Or it's like 3 chapters into the first book. Anyway, so he plays Horus in the new movie. And then Set's played by Gerard Butler.
Ah, okay.
So that's the big one. That's the most famous version of the story. And that resurrection, that Osiris was resurrected from the dead.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, that keeps coming up in different religions over the years too.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Jesus died, comes back 3 days later. So they have this mythology that's really is baked in right in their civilization, where it's just a very, it's a very religious society. And then Akhenaten comes in and says, "Okay, guys, here's what I'm going to do. We're going to eliminate all the other gods and just have one god, Aten." And so that he makes that change.
That's huge.
Right. And so one of the reasons that King Tut becomes so important is he goes back to polytheism after his father, Akhenaten, went to monotheism.
Okay.
But there's also some of the, the rumors that, okay, so it was Akhenaten's idea of the monotheism that the Jews stuck with. And that's one theory where Judaism came, was influenced very heavily because they were slaves to the Egyptians. Anyway. But King Tut, one of the reasons he was an important Egyptian ruler, even though he died as a teenager, and then famously became the subject of a Steve Martin song, which we'll put in the show notes as well.
That's what he's actually known for.
He's actually really known for Steve Martin, Steve Martin's King Tut, born in Arizona, raised in Macedonia, whatever. King Tut. Anyway, I watched that again today when we were preparing for the thing, and I hadn't heard that song in a long time, and I still enjoy it. There's a whole bunch of interesting things about King Tut too. I mean, first of all, the whole idea of the curse of the pharaohs kind of comes from King Tut's, the opening of his tomb in November of 1922. So what happens is that, Harold Carter is this guy who's really, and he's the most famous Egyptologist of all time. And he finally gets into King Tut's lost tomb. And his patron was a guy named George Herbert, and who was a wealthy Englishman who just was really into Egypt. And I guess when you have a lot of money, you can just sponsor trips to Egypt.
Yeah, send people down there. Find something cool for me.
What I want you to do is I want you to rob a grave. Can you do that for me? Can you rob a grave? I will give you...
Find the coolest stuff you can and bring it back to me.
We are going to bring it back to England.
Take it.
Cultural imperialism, like with the whole planet. Well, it's great too. And I have to admit,
accents are bad.
They're horrible accents, but you got to do them sometimes. But I was so excited when I went to the British Museum and I found the Rosetta Stone.
That's awesome.
Which we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah.
So, but George Herbert, the wealthy lord who was really into Egypt, he dies of blood poisoning from infected mosquito bite.
Oh.
Right? So newspapers speculated that he'd fallen victim to the mummy's curse, supposedly outlined on a clay tablet outside of Tut's tomb.
Yeah.
But they made it up. Like the
it wasn't actually a warning?
No, there were certain warnings on different Egyptian tombs, but most of them were for robbers. But there was no
like, don't you dare enter in here. You're gonna
right. There was
get you.
Right. There's no curse of the pharaoh. Like that was made up by the English tabloids after he came back. So in 2002, scientists did a study of the survival rates of the Westerners who were in Egypt as part of that expedition during the excavation of King Tut's tomb.
Okay.
And they found no special dying early. There was no kind of
relation with.
Yeah, kind of like when they looked for the actual musicians dying at the age of 27.
Oh, right.
We talked about that, like how musicians died at age. Well, what they found was that people stopped dying when heroin overdose technology or whatever got better to help people with that. And so, same thing here. When you actually look at the numbers, there is no curse of King Tut, unfortunately. And
but anecdotally, it's so interesting and
right, I love
healing. Right.
Other interesting things about King Tut is that, he was probably the product of incest.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, because most Egyptian pharaohs, the royal family, they kept it in the family. In Egypt, because to them pharaohs were holy. Pharaohs were touched by the gods.
Okay.
So the different pharaonic dynasties were actually, they thought they were created from their big wise god Thoth.
And they don't want to taint the bloodline by procreating with commoners.
That's exactly right. So you keep it in the family to do that. And so inbreeding was just a big thing. And interestingly enough, though, and now this is something that I read about before, but today I didn't realize. So Egyptian boys and girls in the royal family were raised separately from each other. So they didn't see each other until they were past puberty.
That's crazy.
And there's something called the Westermark effect. And it hasn't been, necessarily proved or anything. It's just a theory, but it's an explanation for the traditional taboos we have against incest. In that people who are raised next to each other until the age of like 6 or 7, people that are raised next to each other will have a natural aversion to sexual attraction.
Huh.
And there's a critical period where that has to happen. So if a brother and sister are brought up separately, never meeting one another,
oh, I see.
Then there's a high chance they'll find each other highly sexually attractive because of there's a certain theory of genetic sexual attraction that people who are like yourself. Well, the idea is that if you're raised together, then you don't want to do it with your brothers and sisters because of that effect.
Right. Okay.
And
interesting.
And so
that's why they would keep them separated.
I don't know if that's why they would keep them separated, but it certainly was a result of keeping them separate until puberty. Then they didn't have that natural disgust that people have. No, and there's a revulsion, and it's there so that the brothers and sisters don't get together and have more genetic diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Egyptians found a way around that. They found a way, and that's King Tut. Well, but they think with King Tut though, because sometimes what they did was sometimes the royal daughters could then be like if they didn't have a son or whatever with the wife, then you have it with the daughter. Have the kid with your daughter. Yeah, right. Well, that's the thing. That's keeping it in the family. That's the price of keeping it in the family. So King Tut may have been the product of Akhenaten doing it with one of his daughters and then creating a son. So right. And when you're talking about the other, when you're talking about the orientalization and this fetishization of cultures, when they do things that we find disgusting, like banging your sister and having kids with them, and then making that person the ruler. Like, King Tut had a cleft palate and a club foot. And they think there's more birth defects, congenital defects in the Egyptian royals because they were trying to maintain the bloodline. And my high school Western Civ teacher, Mr. Flaherty, he says that they traded out the kids a lot.
Oh,
that they would
really?
be like, well, if a kid's born with a birth defect, we were talking Gerard Butler before, and he was in the movie 300. When you talk about Sparta, which was that warlike Greek city-state Sparta, where they were the famous warriors came from, if a child was born with a birth defect, they'd dash that child's head against the mountain. They'd leave him out. They'd kill him.
Aww.
So the idea of trading out your kid for a kid that's maybe not so
But then they didn't really
deformed.
believe the deity thing.
Well,
you know what I mean? If they're willing to just take common human
Whoever.
blood.
well, that's what
Like that?
Mr. Flaherty said that. So I don't know if it's real. But
Okay.
but the thing is that Mr. Flaherty's a very smart guy though. I'm friends with him on Facebook, so I have to say
Now everybody knows.
well, I thought he was great.
Smart guy.
But here's the thing. Like, politics versus religion, so they might believe that, they are descended from the gods. But in politics, it might have been harder to follow a leader who was deformed.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that whole idea of birth defects. Anyway, that just makes the Egyptians sound wackier.
For sure.
That and the fact that they shaved, men and women shaved their heads and they wore wigs.
Mm-hmm.
They hated body hair.
Hmm.
So when you see that, you see in movies that ancient Egyptians are always bald. Well, Yul Brynner was always bald. But if even in The Mummy, the guy that plays them
right.
in the movie The Mummy, he's bald.
So it's not just to make them look tough.
Right. It is. It's the fact that they shaved their heads and everything because they weren't a big fan of body hair. So electrolysis would have been super popular in ancient Egypt, like wax, like waxing stores or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know how they would have used wax though, but they certainly didn't have any. They certainly didn't have an aversion to dung. They. I was trying to make a connection there from wax to manure.
I don't get it.
Because the Egyptians were the first society to try to create birth control. And they didn't even know about hormones, obviously. They would mix together mud, honey, and crocodile dung. And then
that's gross.
put that inside the business.
Oh.
Because the acidity from crocodile dung was known as an effective spermicide.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So, but that's what we're saying here.
That's
like,
romantic.
All the things we say about ancient Egypt makes it sound weird, terrifying. So you're like, why would people be really interested in it? It's because it's a civilization where things we talk about it like, oh God, crocodile dung. Like, how do you even collect crocodile dung? You're like, oh my God. Like, where do you find it? I mean, I guess along the River Nile.
Yeah, where the crocodiles hang out.
Yeah, okay. But that's the thing. So all this like mysticism around Egypt. And, the pyramids themselves over time have, they give it that air of a magical place.
Definitely.
And it's a place, a lot of times people go to Egypt when they go to the Holy Land.
Mm-hmm.
They go to Israel and they go to Egypt because they're neighboring countries.
Right.
And they're already kind of in a mystical mood after going to the Holy Land. So they go to the Holy Land and be all these places like, Jesus was here.
Yeah.
And then feel like, oh my God, what Jesus is here. And then they feel that religious feeling. And then they go to the pyramids and they see the same thing. So it all kind of mixes this together.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes Egypt sound like this mystical, and the pyramids. And the pyramids are fairly amazing.
They really are.
There's plenty of places on the internet where you can see exactly how they built the pyramid.
Or how they think they did.
Real plausible explanations.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, for a long time, people thought that, there's no way the Egyptians could have figured out how to build the pyramids. It must have been aliens.
Right?
That the aliens.
I mean, that's a logical explanation for it.
Yeah, and some things, like here's something I did not know that I just read today when we were doing research for this, is that if you had a Mercator projection map of the world, okay, so you know what a Mercator projection is?
No.
You ever seen a map where they cut up the globe?
Oh, yeah.
So you take the globe and you spread
like the
it.
old world kind of ones that you see all the time.
Yeah, so they'll take the globe and cut it up. So it's instead of being square, it'll be in pieces. It'll be these oval shapes. So that's the Mercator projection map of the world. It's more accurate because you're not stretching things to fit a rectangle.
Right.
But it says if you take a Mercator projection map of the world and pinpoint the exact middle of landmass, east and west parallel, north and south meridian, the exact middle of the landmass in the Mercator projection is the Great Pyramid.
Ah.
So they didn't know that the world was round.
Right.
And, that's another interesting thing. So in the Gods of Egypt movie, they actually portray the earth as flat. So it's in addition to the fantasy that Gerard Butler is Egyptian in any way, or Nicolas Coster-Waldau is, not a Danishman, a Dane, a Great Dane.
Right.
It's also the idea that the earth is flat in the movie.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And the gods are 9 feet tall and can turn into monsters. Like that's obviously we're dealing in fantasy world here.
That's pretty cool.
But how would the Egyptian builders know that the Great Pyramid would be the exact center of the earth?
Right.
Well, obviously they wouldn't. So, but who did? Who would know that?
Aliens.
The Zetas. The aliens from Zeta Reticuli would know about that.
That's right.
And Well,
from Nibiru.
Nibiru. And the map we were looking at last week when we were talking about Nibiru, that's episode 80 of the See You on the Other Side podcast, Beyond Pluto, Discovering Planet X in Nibiru. The map we were looking at of the rejiggered post-cataclysm, post-Nibiru cataclysm, that was a Mercator projection.
Right. So it's like it's like taking a globe and slicing it and then peeling it apart and then sticking it.
Yeah, think about if you peeled an orange in strips.
Yeah.
Kind of. So I mean that's one of the interesting things. I mean, in addition to their disgusting birth control. Here's something that I think is funny. That if you are in ancient Egypt, if you were a dwarf or you were a giant, you automatically got a job.
Wow.
So little people were often hired for security-sensitive jobs, such as gold workers.
Oh.
And so giants, like real tall dudes, or other people with visibly unusual physical features, also got gold worker jobs.
Huh, cool.
Because if they ran away, they could be easily spotted in a crowd. So that was the thing.
Okay, see, I was thinking because they have special, like, unique skills with their physical, differences from the norm. So, like, the dwarves could get into the little tunnels and, places like that, or the giants could
dunk,
carry heavier stuff, or reach higher and, get the stuff off the top shelf for everybody.
Yeah, so you wouldn't need one of those little claws. No, I think that's great. Right. Yeah, no, that's...
But the running away thing, yeah, I suppose that's...
Right.
Harder for them to hide.
But the thing is, when you talk about this, we're Orientalizing right now. We talk because it's like, hey, it's ancient Egypt. Aren't they weird? And we find the weird in every culture, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
But Egypt is great on that because it's just been such a mainstay of Western civilization. The study behind it, the worry about it, the mysticism of it has been with us so long that it just makes it a little extra fun. And some of their traditions are so interesting. So there's this thing called the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
Okay.
Okay, and
I've heard of it.
Right. You'll hear about the Book of the Dead whenever they have some kind of movie, because it'll be like, oh yes, as it is written in the Book of the Dead. Somebody will say something. And the thing about the Book of the Dead is that it wasn't like some kind of book that's going to tell you about what's going to happen after you die. It was a book of magic spells designed to help you get from the afterlife to paradise.
Oh, that's right. So I remember learning about that.
So when you died, you didn't just go to heaven or hell. You had to get there.
You had to find your way.
Right, and to find your way, you needed the spells in the Book of the Dead. Like
that's pretty cool.
You had to get by crocodiles. You had to...
So it's like a little guidebook.
Yeah, of spells. And then rich people would have their own Book of the Dead written for them.
Wow.
So their name would be in the spells. So it's just...
That's a fun business for somebody.
Yeah. And so I can't believe they haven't made like a Book of the Dead video game yet, where like you die and it's your job to get to the judgment.
Oh, that would be cool.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, that's the next thing is they weigh your heart.
Mm-hmm.
So... Osiris, the chief god of the dead, has a tribunal of deities, and once you get past all the stuff in the afterlife, once you dodge the crocodiles and get over the Nile and all the things you have to do in order to get to paradise, you get judged. And what they do is they rip out your heart. But you're already dead. So I don't know if it hurts.
So, but it's when you say they rip out your heart. They're like dissecting you.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, it's the ritual that accompanied this was the weighing of the heart on a pair of enormous scales. And so Osiris and the tribunal would judge you. And then, and Osiris used to be the big god, the number one, Odin in Norse mythology, Zeus in Greek mythology. And then he was killed, and then went down to the underworld, and that's where he hangs out now. And the proceedings were recorded by Thoth, the deity of wisdom. And he's often depicted as a human with a little bird head riding on a skull papyrus.
Oh,
yeah. And his other animal form was a baboon.
Huh.
So I don't think of the baboon as the most intelligent of the primates. I think of us as the most intelligent of the primates, too.
Well, I would hope so.
But the god of wisdom's other form is a baboon.
So what did they do with this heart weighing ceremony? What what was the point of it? If
Well-
your heart weighed a certain amount, you were cool or what?
Yeah. Well, here's what happens. So it's weighed against the principle of truth and justice, represented by a feather, the symbol of Maat, or M-A-A-T, the goddess of truth, order, and justice.
Okay.
And if the heart balances against the feather, then the deceased is granted a place in the fields of Hetepaniru, which is
Okay.
paradise. If it's heavy with the weight of wrongdoings, then it sinks, and then the feather. So you're weighing your heart against a feather,
Yeah, it's more of a symbolic weighing, not like
right? Like, oh, because the thing is, that most people whose heart weighed like actually 3 pounds, like whatever
Yeah.
our heart weighs, like whatever heart weighs, like maybe
Yeah.
3 pounds. I'm gonna look that up right now.
I was gonna say, because that to me 3 pounds seems heavy for a heart, but I don't know. Never thought about it before. Really,
Maybe your heart is just heavy with guilt, Wendy.
maybe I just have a tiny cold heart, like the Grinch.
So the average weight of a normal heart in a man is about 300 grams.
Okay,
And 300 grams equals
convert 300 grams to pounds.
0.66 pounds.
Okay,
Okay, so
all
the
right.
average is 3.6, but it can get as big as
A 3 pound heart would be pretty massive, dude.
it can get as big as 500 grams. So it can get, 500 grams then would be over a pound. So if your heart weighs over a pound, chances are it's not going to match up against that feather, and you are going to die.
Well, I thought you're dead already.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
You're going to the bad place.
There is no bad place. If you cannot get through, there's no hell in Egypt. If you
That's right.
if you can't get to the afterlife, you go to oblivion. That's it.
Okay.
No soul. It just, because what happens is that the gobbler gets you. Right. And that is Emmet, the gobbler, who's
Oh.
got the head of a crocodile, the front legs and body of a lion, and the back legs of a hippo.
Wow.
Which the whole hippo thing doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Because if you have the back legs of a hippo,
Yeah, you can't go very fast.
correct.
This is like their version of the puppy monkey baby.
Yes, the Egyptian puppy monkey baby is Amet, the gobbler. I love the fact that he's going to gobble you to death. And-
That is, I mean, it does make you imagine a cartoon,
Well, the
like
whole
chasing after somebody, awkwardly chasing with their hippo feet. Like,
right, and the whole idea of when you say like, when we talk about our heart, people will say like, my heart is with this, or I love you with all my heart, and
or have a heavy heart today. Or,
right, bingo, you have a heavy heart. That means it ain't going to weigh up against the feather and get ready to get gobbled. Right. So that the Egyptians considered the heart to be the center of thought, memory, and emotion.
Okay,
And
that's pretty
That's why they were weighing it.
common.
As we would think of, you weigh our brains is where all our thoughts and things take place. The Egyptians thought it was the heart.
I see.
And that's where we get that idea. So still with us is that idea of the heart is the center of our feelings.
Yeah.
And that's something that the Egyptians gave us.
Wow, that's a pretty big one when you
Yeah.
when you consider all the songs that have been written about that. And
hmm Thank the Egyptians for
Yes.
that.
All right.
You know, we should talk a little bit about pop culture. I can't believe that we're already like over 50 minutes into talking about ancient Egypt, because I feel like we just scratched the surface. I've got so many
Oh
more
yeah,
things to say.
definitely. Right. There's a lot more we can cover, and I'm sure we will in future episodes.
We haven't even talked about how the scarab that they had, like the
Oh,
beetle.
yeah.
The beetle was sacred to the Egyptians,
Right.
or any of the other weird pharaohs and stuff. But just to talk about a little pop culture associated with Egypt. Last week we talked about Stargate
Yep.
and the idea of the aliens coming and them being the Egyptian gods.
Hmm.
You know,
Right.
Power Slave, a very famous Iron Maiden song, name of an album. That's a song about an Egyptian pharaoh who doesn't want to die. And so the idea is he's slave to the power of death. But you can get outside of that slavery by being, buried in the tomb and the mummification and all that kind of stuff. So Power Slave, Egyptian, Iron Maiden, listen to it. It's a totally sweet song. Interestingly enough, Sleeping Bag by ZZ Top.
What?
Yeah, have you ever heard that? Slip inside my sleeping bag. The third verse. Let's go out to Egypt, 'cause it's in the plan. Sleep beside the pharaohs in the shifting sand. We'll look at some pyramids and check out some heads. Oh, we'll whip out our mattress, 'cause there ain't no beds. Slip inside my sleeping bag. So ZZ Top even talks about Egypt.
Huh.
And I was like, what, is that for real? Yeah, like that's the third verse of Sleeping Bag.
That's funny.
Right, that is funny. I thought I'm like, what the heck could ZZ Top be interested? Anyway, obviously the Mummy.
Oh yeah,
is a huge one.
That was on the other night on TV.
The 1931 or the Brendan Fraser one?
No, the 1930, like the old one. It was
The
on
super old Mummy.
I was like channel surfing late in the middle of the night, and one of those, like the Bordello of horror. It wasn't
Yes.
that one, but it was one of those where they have little bits in between, and then they
Oh, they have
play
a show?
old movies.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah,
That's fun.
yeah, I thought it was fun.
We'll have to have a whole horror hosts episode sometime because I love horror hosts.
Yeah,
And
totally.
We in Milwaukee when I was a kid, the horror host was Too Loose No Neck on Shock Theater on Channel 12, and so
Right.
I'd always watch Shock Theater. It was my
And there was
favorite.
also, wasn't it Elvira?
Yep,
like that.
the Elvira, the
All
mistress.
night.
No, that you're thinking.
Wait.
You're thinking Elvira was the mistress of dark.
Oh, that's
you're
right.
thinking of USA Up All Night.
Okay,
Yeah, I know what you're
we're
talking about.
off on a tangent now, but
Yes, and horror host is something we'll have to go into sometime because I love them.
the Mummy was on, and I had not seen that original one, so I didn't watch the whole thing, but it was pretty fun just seeing the very beginning of it and a couple pieces of it.
Well, I always think it's interesting because it's with the story of the mummy, it's never like a pharaoh, like a mummified pharaoh coming back.
Right?
It's like an evil sorcerer
Yeah, it's true.
who does the, and then finds rituals and stuff like that, in a way that they can come back later and find the person that they were in love with. And
Right.
it's that Dracula thing too, that they see a woman who they think is a reincarnation of a person that they loved in ancient Egypt. And that's a funny thing too, because the woman that they see is always, like, whether it's Dracula or whether it's the movie The Mummy, it's always some white woman.
Right.
And you're like, well, there weren't a lot of white people in Egypt in 2500 BC. So who you really like?
Well, but reincarnation.
I
You
know,
have to-
but they always get the same actress to play, like when they do
Yeah.
the flashback or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, at least, put some makeup on her or something, or have her go to the tanning booth. But so the Mummy I think that's where a lot of people get their idea of ancient Egypt. They see
Definitely.
that and that it's horrific.
Well, even when you're a kid and you go to the museum with your class or whatever, I mean, that was the most exciting part, was going to see the Mummy exhibit, because it was
Yes.
so like, ooh, this is really crazy.
Well, and because you're looking at a human body, and I mean, think about that though. Like, what if somebody took somebody you cared about, dug them up, and then stuck them in a box? Stuck them in like a glass box for people to look at. There is something, not necessarily, I wouldn't say it's inhumane. There's something cold about
Yeah.
taking a body and like displaying. Check this
But
body out.
you really don't think of it as a human, because you see it, in the wrapping like that, and it's obviously a human form, but it comes across more as a monster or something like that, especially when you're a little kid,
Mhm.
So you don't really think of it as a corpse so much as just kind of I don't know, an object, I guess.
Right. And also you're worried, like, am I going to get the curse now because I'm looking at this mummy?
Right.
So, I mean, it is interesting. It's also interesting to see, like, you're like, wow, were people that short that long ago? But it is true that people were shorter. Like, we have gotten a lot taller as time's gone on. A lot of that is due to nutrition, because the average height of the Roman soldier, I mean, at the time that all this Egypt business was going on, was 5'1".
Wow.
So when they look at the graves and stuff like that of Roman soldiers, you see a lot of 5'1" guys.
Yeah.
So we have definitely gotten taller over time. And it's interesting to see that when you see a mummy and you're like, oh man, but of course they're all shriveled up and stuff like that too.
Right.
Like nobody's wearing heels. It's just a leathery, disgusting thing. And the wrapping and everything. I mean, it is it is a monster. It does look like a monster. It doesn't look human.
No.
And
That's why they put the masks and everything on him, though, right? I mean,
right. Well, yeah, and the gold masks, and to make it a beautiful thing, because they know what happens to the body. Even after you're
Right.
mummified, you look like a piece of leather work, like a belt. Look at that. You see that belt? That used to be the pharaoh.
Wow.
The bad guy in the Thundercats, Mum-Ra.
Wow.
And he's by the ancient omens of evil. This is what he'd say as he'd turn into Mum-Ra, and he was surrounded by like Egyptian gods. He was in a pyramid and was surrounded by 4, ancient Egyptian gods, and that was the ancient spirits of evil. Their gods are the animal faced, the people with animal heads.
Yeah.
So they were big otherkin. fans in ancient Egypt. But I'm trying to think if there's any other different movies or anything like that off the top of my head. But
what about like Indiana Jones?
Oh yeah, well that's another thing, right? They go into Egypt right in the first movie.
But when you were talking about the weighing of the heart, and then of course immediately I had to think of the scene where the heart gets ripped out.
Oh yeah,
because you said rip out your heart, but that was a living heart, and it's not even related. But still, made me think of Indiana Jones.
And it's also that was Hindu, or they all worshipped. And
that's right,
Kali.
I haven't seen it in so long.
Yep, Kali was. I mean, he does go to the Cairo in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay.
And it's the Ark of the Covenant it's also something that's featured in the Old Testament. So that's completely related to the Egyptians. So I'm with you. I'm definitely with you on that one. But if there's anything we missed, anything ancient Egypt we missed that you guys would like to talk about, make sure you mention that in the comments and let us know if there's something particular about, because we'll have to go back to ancient Egypt sometime and we'll do a follow-up on some more of the mythology and some more of the, like maybe some specifics on the weirdness. This is just like a little 101 into why we still have the mysticization of ancient Egypt with new movies coming out, where it's still something that people are fascinated by thousands of years after these people were alive.
Right.
And so, okay. Now, one of the cool things that the Egyptians came up with is our idea of the Shai. Shai. Sometimes a goddess, sometimes a god. The Shai is born with each person, and at their death gives a true account of their person's life, deeds, and misdeeds. And their role is similar to a guardian angel presiding over destiny and fate. So we get some of the idea of our guardian angel, a personal angel associated with us from ancient Egypt, and that's the Shai. So that's why this week's song in the podcast is a Sunspot song that we wrote a few years ago called Guardian Angel. I blame you for the pain that I tried to escape. I blame you for every heart I hurt and all my mistakes. So give it up and don't bother. Don't waste your breath on this ground. Oh, one of these days I know you'll let me down. And the monster is such a dumb up. I'm gonna punish my guardian angel for let me live one minute more. It's kind of, I'm gonna test my luck. I'm gonna punish my guardian angel where the worst things that I can't command. A monster is such a dumb up. I'll punish every blasphemy. There's nothing left here to redeem. It's kind of, I'm gonna test my luck. I am the soul you tried to save, and I just wanna make you pay. I'm gonna punish my guardian angel. Punish my guardian angel. I'm gonna punish my guardian angel. Punish my guardian angel.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at othersidepodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
Oh yes, as it is written in the Book of the Dead.